Madera Companies, welcome back to Touch Base. This is the last episode of this season as we've been kind of walking through emotional intelligence, and we felt the best way to do this was to bring in Dave Gilles, who is the CEO for Madera Residential, Quext, Rockwood, providing leadership in multiple other areas with Viva and also with Select Title and conversations. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming in and being a part of this.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can withstand the bar that's been set from the folks in this season. They've absolutely done terrific.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's been an awesome experience for me on a selfish level, just getting a chance to have those conversations and kind of see people's journeys and learn what they've been through and how they connect with all of this. Before we kind of get into all of that, though, I mean, give us a little bit of a bio. I mean, I think most people know who you are. They've seen your face or they've seen your name. You got to be a part of season 1 with us as we talked about community and all those types of things. But just give us a little feel for who you are.
Yeah, I'll take you back in time a little bit. And I really think that essentially my story is kind of wrapped around this whole topic and sort of lived it. And I think with time and wisdom, I got better at certain things. But when I look back, it was the relationships I built early in my career that really set me on my journey that I never really lost touch with. It always impacted my life and still to this day impacts my life. So I'm a real zealot around when it comes to building relationships, and that's probably what really drew me to Madera as well. They had that belief, but prior to landing here in my dream job, I spent 10 years in prison. Wait. Public accounting.
I did not see that coming.
Yeah, which for me was a little bit like prison, in that in the accounting world, you're typically dealing in the past and not much in the future. So for me, I was sort of fighting my inner self a lot, but found ways in that industry to get out in front, did a lot more consulting the last half of my career. Actually got into physician acquisition and compensation, which then led to more of fulfilling work for me and helping people understand how they can move forward with their lives and still make the money they want to make, but also have a corporation make money as well.
Sure.
And those two don't have to be diametrically opposed. So after public accounting, I was drawn into the telecom business in 2001. So really the infancy of high-speed data, where high-speed data was just faster than dial-up. You didn't have to wait for it, but it was only like 1.5 megabits down in 2001, so roughly 20 years ago, and really was enticed into that organization. And I joined Charter Communication. They were a new organization. They had just gone public, and they were getting talent. So, to relate this to what we're talking about today, Charter Communication was started by an accountant.
Yeah.
And so he had hired several other accountants who I knew, and that's where my in came. But that's how I started in the telecom world. And it was all based on relationships I had. So I did that for 17 years. I tend to be a pretty loyal person.
Yeah.
So if I'm committing for long term.
Yeah.
Did that for 17 years, and then we were acquired. And it was a great career, and it was really a Madera-like environment. Went from Charter to another startup, Suddenlink. We built that company really from taking over bankrupt cable companies, and we eventually sold it for $9.5 billion.
Oh, man.
So that was a fun journey, learned a lot, gained mentors along the way, and that's the other thing. I think through my career, I've been blessed with being around good people that would take the time and teach me not just the tasks that needed to be done, but why you were doing it, how you go about it, versus just focusing on the task. And I'll go back to even before that. My parents were great about that. My high school coaches and teachers were great about that. But so moved through the telecom world. We sold off to a company that had did not have a vision of doing business like I did. And I thought, well, I can make this work. I can try to use my influence. At the time I was leading at the time all of Suddenlink properties, so across 17 states, about 6,000 employees, and we were a big part of the company. And I can help educate them. And I really went into it with an open mind, really tried to absorb what they were trying to tell me, but realized our methodologies were just opposed. And so I spent 2 years of fighting through that internally and putting on a good face externally, and just had no satisfaction, no fulfillment, and really said, I've got to do something different. And that's when I met Dave Marcinkowski, and that came about by the relationships I had built internal to Suddenlink. Is Dave had hired 2 people that worked directly for me in John McNelly and Mike Nelson. And then it also came through some external relationships that I had built in the community. Moved to Lubbock in 2006. Got fairly involved in the community because I just believe that's the right thing to do. It wasn't to promote the business. It was so that I had an outlet for my need to help community, leave the world a better place than when I found it. And Lubbock is a great place to do that.
Absolutely.
You've been elsewhere.
Yeah.
And what's beautiful about Lubbock is people want you. They're not jealous of you getting involved. In fact, they really want you to be involved. So when I was coming into Madera, I knew they had a great culture. I didn't feel the need to change that culture. My thought was, how do I not disrupt this? How do I become part of this? How do I help steward this more so than change? Now, when I moved to Lubbock, it was a totally different scenario. We acquired the properties in all of West Texas from Amarillo to San Angelo. It was about 250,000 customers, and they were run out of a region here in Lubbock. We had an abrupt change of leadership. The person left, took a lot of her talent with her back to Dallas, and went to work for Time Warner. And I was asked to come here. And that was, again, a relationship. So it was the co-founder of Charter, who dated back to Arthur Anderson, which is where I started, knew of me. But at Charter, I didn't realize his stepdaughter worked in our organization. And he came to me at one point in time. He said, I just have to meet you because I hear your name at every family event that I go to. That I had made such an impression with how I approach things that he said, I just need to meet you. And so he became a mentor of mine. He was, we had a lot in common. He came from a small town, was in public accounting, but then started businesses, Charter being the third. He was the one that asked me to move from St. Louis. So here I am in a metropolitan 3.5 million to Lubbock, Texas, 250,000 maybe at the time, 5 kids. And I can still remember the plane flight in. They brought me in at night with the window shades down. And for those of you that have been to Lubbock, you'll understand that joke. But on that plane ride, it was just he and I. And he said, and I'll never forget this. He said, we're asking you to come to Lubbock, not because you're a good operator, which you are. It's you understand people. And we need these people to understand who we are. So it's like, oh, crap. That's pretty deep. And that's a big mission, right? But their culture was, they had no standards for anything. In fact, when I got here, people were technicians and front counter people were taking their shirts off at the end of the workday, changing into something without the logo on it so they could go to the grocery store and not get harassed.
Oh, man.
So that's what I was walking into. That was a totally different, okay, we've got to change some things, right? Madera, not the case at all. Madera is a well-run organization, Could we do better? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Always can do better, and that's the canaille in us. Or do things that give our people more time to take care of our residents. But two different scenarios, and so two different tacks of, what is my style going to be? So in the case of Suddenlink, we bought them from Cox Communications, which is a large operator, and they typically are in metro areas, and this was kind of a forgotten area for them. So they didn't have a lot of support from the corporate office. Just do what you do out there. Don't worry. So they didn't have any place to go ask for help.
Okay.
I was coming from a corporate office, although I had a small region out in California that I ran from St. Louis. It was really a corporate person, and I was coming into the region. And to really make impactful changes, you can't do it as a region by yourself, and you can't do it as corporate by yourself.
Yeah.
And those two groups oftentimes don't necessarily have the trust level. They don't have the relationship because you don't spend enough time with those people. What I forced on my people in the region, and I could also force on the people that used to work for me at corporate, or I had relationships that were tight, I forced those conversations to happen. And I didn't have to be in the middle, nor did I want to be in the middle. I often said I grew up Catholic, and we had a priest in the middle of us when we were confessing, but I don't think you have to have that in real life. I think a direct conversation is the best way to get to resolution, best way to get to common thoughts, best way to get to best practices is really build those relationships. And so to a person, I think that's what my team would thank me most for, was forcing them to build those bonds.
Yeah.
And I liken it to, and I always tell people, if you're ever in a position of power, you can never use the organizational chart to get done what you want done. Because you'll get that task done. That's all you'll really get. You'll get whatever you say I want done. You won't get anything further than that. If you try to truly influence people, and again, not deceive, but influence, give your side, give your perspective, give your reasons why, and listen to their reasons why they might be against that idea, and truly have that debate, you'll get to a really good answer.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, more ideas start coming. Hey, we could also do this. So I think the thing I'm most proud of in that scenario was the amount of friendships that still exist today from people that don't work together, not even in the same industry anymore, still have that relationship because they did some really cool things.
Yeah, that is very cool. And that is just the perfect setup. And so if you could do me a favor here and just kind of like bare minimum foundational understanding for you as we talk all of these things regarding emotional intelligence and social skills. What is emotional intelligence for you then? How do you just say, this is kind of what I say I think it is?
I think it really, to me, the social skills part of it's probably the easiest thing at the end of the day. If you do the other 4 building blocks really well, you're kind of doing the social skills.
Yes, agreed. Yes.
And if you're truly genuine to them, right? If you're really self-aware and you really understand how in certain circumstances you might be coming across or where your weaknesses are, and you go find people that have strengths in those areas, or where you're really strong, take more of a leadership role.
Sure.
Just be aware of when you're not the expert and when you are the expert.
Right.
And play the role accordingly.
Absolutely.
And then, the self-regulation, I probably struggled with that one a little bit early in my career, and I'm going to blame my dad since I gave him credit earlier. He was not very self-regulated when we dealt with animals.
Feels like there's a lot of stories that go into this.
Oh my gosh, when we're trying to load hogs onto a trailer, let's just say my vocabulary expanded at a very young age because they don't want to do what you want to do.
Right.
And so not much self-regulation. And so I would have the urge when things were not going my way in instances to lash out a bit early in my career. And that just doesn't work.
Right.
You've now not only not built trust with someone else, you've built distrust. And it gives the perception that you're in it for reasons other than for the entity.
Right.
And so, had those lessons, and the motivation side. Natalie did a fantastic job, by the way.
She was awesome.
She was awesome. It was interesting to hear her say in motivation, I wanted to do something bigger than myself or bigger than the job, because that's where true fulfillment comes from, and so true. It may be your goal as a youngster. I want to do this, but you soon realize that your legacy that you can leave is the biggest thing that you can leave.
Sure.
And it's the thing you'll be most fulfilled from. And victories that are more selfish or just singular or individualistic, they're really hard to celebrate.
Yeah.
Who are you going to celebrate with?
It's so fleeting.
It really is, and it's like, who cares? Anyone else? Who cares?
Right.
Whereas the team victory, when you accomplish something as a team, how awesome is that?
Yeah.
I mean, it takes me back to early competitions and that thrill of victory, and it wasn't because I won; it was because the team won.
Right.
And so, it was interesting in motivation that she was bringing that up.
Yeah. So, and again, I mean, we hit those first three. Being such a people person like you are, and I've gotten a chance to watch you with so many different people, how did empathy develop for you there?
To me, if you're not working and trying to build relationships at work, you're missing the boat.
Yeah.
And I think you probably got similar feedback early in your career. You can't be friends with people at work.
Yeah.
I'd like to use one of my dad's words right now, but I'm not going to. It's a bunch of bull.
Yeah.
That you can still be, you can still do the right thing, right, and not be influenced by friendship.
Yeah.
In fact, I've had to fire my best friend. I had to do that at one point in time, and it was the best thing for him. It was the best thing for our organization.
Yeah.
And at the end, we're still best friends.
Yeah.
Because it just is what it is. But it would be so shallow to go through your day and not try to build relationships and be friends. So I encourage people to do that.
Yeah.
You can't cross the line with that, but certainly there's nothing wrong with it.
Clearly, you've had a lot of success in being able to navigate some of these things. What did you learn from the mistakes along the way? What areas might you have struggled a little bit? What did you learn from this did not go well, or the way I was hoping it would go well? And then how did you find the truth of what you needed to learn from that?
I think one of the things that I said early on was to constantly understand how other people were perceiving your behaviors and were they interpreting it correctly, and if you felt they weren't, then you had to change, not them.
Yeah.
They were going to perceive what they perceived. And so, even at Suddenlink, where I thought I was fairly defined, we were having so much success at a region. We started at 250,000 customers. We soon were at 600,000 customers. We were given more. That comes with a price.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And one of my last years at Suddenlink, it was probably 3 years before I left, I was sent to a class. It was called Leadership at the Top. It was in Colorado, and it was a bunch of CEOs for the most part, and I wasn't. But as part of that, they did a peer review, and they also did a subordinate and a leader of me. So I had 50 people answer a spectrum of questions on me, and then they would give the readout in different facets, like here's what your subordinates say, here's what your peers say, here's what your bosses or say about you. And I noticed in the peer group that there was some hints of you've been too successful in their eyes, and that my way of thinking was the only way of thinking. That's how they perceive me, and that was like, oh wow, I could, if I'm in their shoes, I could see that, because we were doing a lot of things, and what we did ended up being the standard. Now, I always looked at it as like, well, we did the homework. We were working closely with our corporate folks at the region, so you had everyone kind of represented, but not from afar.
Yeah.
So we changed that up. I said we have to be better at involving peers as well, and that's how we got better as an organization too. Because in looking back, I was like, okay, at the time we were only influencing half the company.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we want everyone else to
Sure.
And their thoughts to, because the best ideas are the ones that are the ones you take and make a little bit better. And everyone has a perspective, and everyone can add something to it if they want to.